What's up, good people? We are big fans of you guys watching us on this nightly show that we call The Sweat. It's an hour of fantasy and sports betting advice you absolutely cannot get anywhere else. Yes, but that is not a guarantee.
He's Emerson. I'm Jessie. Golf and baseball are on the horizon, but we'll start with our NFL guys. DraftKings contributors Jeff Ulrich, Reed Fowler, and Steve Buchanan. Let's play some price check. I just can't stop thinking about money. Starting with Mark Ingram, who is up $900 when the Ravens face the Browns. Are you paying $6,600 for him, Steve?
Absolutely. I mean, the Browns really aren't necessarily getting burned on the ground so far this season. It's actually been more through the air. They're allowing an average of 78 rushing yards per game on the ground, but 52 through the air. And in total, it's 157 yards through the air, which right now is the seventh highest in the league. And even that's after allowing 0 to the Rams last week. So it's just an area they've been getting burned in. Like, I like pairing Ingram with Lamar Jackson. You're essentially soaking up all the touchdown equity with those two guys. I mean, Ingram is just on one of those runs. He started to happen with the Saints. He's doing it right now with the Ravens. This is their bona fide goal line guy. If Jackson's not rushing it in. So, yeah, 6,600, still a little too cheap for Ingram in this spot.
Reed, the guy now has 2 games in which he's topped 100 yards rushing with multiple touchdowns. I mean, do you want to pay $6,600 for him?
Yeah, I think you have to. I mean, at this point with Mark Ingram in this backfield, when you look at just yards after contact per attempt, he's second only to Justin Jackson, and he's only getting 60% of the snaps. Justice Hill, a preseason darling that we all thought could factor into a lot of games, he's only seen 16% of the snaps. Gus Edwards is still around. He's still lingering, getting 20+% of those snaps. But, I mean, look at this offense. You can't really just hone in on Mark Ingram. You can't hone in on Hollywood Brown or even Lamar Jackson. You really have to defend all this. And Steve mentioned it. Cleveland is not the worst running backs. They're giving up 20 DK fantasy points per game to opposing running backs. But, I mean, this is his backfield. So it's at $6,600, I think you have to pay for that.
Jeff, these guys totally willing to pay up. Are you as well?
Oh, let me throw some cold water on this Ingram love train. 6,600. Look, he's only playing 60% of the snaps, and he hit that mark last week for the first time. I get that he's had 2 massive games now, but like let's not forget he's had to score multiple touchdowns to get there. You're not getting a high PPR upside here with Mark Ingram. He had 4 targets last week, and that was against KC in basically the most up-tempo match you're going to get here. Cleveland has a very good front 7 or front 4, whatever you want to call it. It's probably the strength of their team, quite frankly, right now, with Myles Garrett there, Olivier Vernon, and Sheldon Richardson stuffing up the middle. I don't think there's going to be as much space for Mark Ingram, so I could definitely see this being a down spot with the price up. It's not really the way I want to go, quite frankly. I'm surprised to hear these guys are all over him, quite frankly.
All right, let's go with Russell Wilson, top quarterback last week, more than 400 passing yards, 4 total touchdowns, kind of crazy when you really think about it. However, his price is $200 less. Now sitting at, $6,100. Would you consider him a good deal against the Cardinals, Reed Muffin?
Yeah, so I'm going to throw some cold water on Ulrich's Browns. They're not as good as he thought they actually were. Now I'm going to throw some cold water on the Cardinals, of course. Jeff's going to always say you can pay down at quarterback, you can play Kyler Murray in the same contest and go cheap. But look at this matchup. I mean, if you're the Seattle Seahawks and you have Russell Wilson in the backfield, I think this is a good spot. I think you can pay up for this. You look at the Cardinals, they give up the most rush attempts to opposing quarterbacks. And we haven't seen yet Russell Wilson use his legs. But look, the offensive line is 28th per FootballOutsiders.com. They're giving up a lot of sacks, and that right side, like Ufedi, is not a good guard. And so when you just look at what these guys are able to do on the offensive line, which is absolutely nothing, I think you could see a guy like Russell Wilson even getting him cheaper than he was last week as someone that you could stream and pair with guys like Will Dissly. I mean, talk about a tight end in a barren position. Will Dissly and even Tyler Lockett, who we'll talk about in a little bit, as a nice contrarian stack. So yeah, I like it.
Jeff, you want to throw some hot water on this?
Yeah, the Dismaster 3000, Will Dissly going to be shocked this week, I guess. Maybe for good reason, because Arizona does not cover the tight end. They just don't even think it exists. Look, I can't throw any cold water on Russell Wilson this week. I think I'd be crazy to have to do that. Somehow he's less expensive against the second highest pace of play team in the league, who can't stop anything right now. They have no corners. Look, the only bust factor here for Russell Wilson is that somehow Seattle gets this horrid ground game of theirs going that they love so much. and then maybe they get a turnover and they get up by 2 scores, and then it's just a low volume day. But even there, I mean, against such a weak secondary, Russell Wilson could be efficient on like 25 pass attempts. So I think that, for GPPs, there might be a slightly better upside spots in other places. But no, I definitely like Russell Wilson at this price. Kyler Murray's like the same price, so you could still go there in GPPs. But yeah, I'd still rank Wilson ahead of Murray this week just due to the price factor. So.
Yeah, Steve, as long as this team's run game is not producing, I mean, it's going to be Wilson or bust, right?
I mean, Chris Carson can't hold on to the ball to save his life at this point. So who you gonna trust the ball? It's gonna be Russell Wilson. I mean, the Cardinals are allowing an average of 30.3 DraftKings fantasy points so far this season to opposing quarterbacks, which is the third highest in the league. And then we saw Lamar Jackson rush for 120 yards against them. So now we got Russell Wilson, who has been getting a little bit more of his legs lately, 73 rushing yards over his last 2 weeks. And then, we mentioned Will Dissly. How about the matchup for Tyler Lockett? He's going to see Tremaine Brock Sr., not Jr., the senior. He's going to be in coverage in the slot there. He's been getting torched so far this season. 16 targets against him, 10 receptions allowed, 229 yards. 95 of those came after the catch. I mean, if you want a guy yards after the catch, Tyler Lockett, baby, come on. So Russell Wilson, Tyler Lockett, Dissly. I have no problem doing a 3-man stack like that, but Russell Wilson is someone I like right off the bat. He jumps out at his price point with his matchup. So, yeah, absolutely on Russell Wilson again for a second week.
Cooper Kupp is another guy who will cost you less following a monster showing on Sunday. Is this guy just way too cheap at $6,500 when he faces the Bucs, Jeff?
He kind of is, to be honest. I mean, this is, again, a little bit of a dream matchup. Tampa Bay, a good front seven, a little bit more pressure on the quarterback this year. Their secondary hasn't improved at all. We saw it last week. And look, Cooper Kupp leading the Rams in targets by like double digits right now, leading them in red zone targets compared to all the other wide receivers. So he just looks set up to be a monster day. Obviously, Jared Goff's struggling a little bit, but he's not struggling when he's targeting Cooper Kupp on those short slants over the middles or those short crossing routes. The only thing I'd say here, and this is more of just a point when you're making your roster construction, probably more for big field GPPs, this is a really good spot for Brandon Cooks or Robert Woods to get off to. And it would not shock me with Jared Goff's home splits that one of those wide receivers ends up leading the Rams in fantasy points this week, just because they have the bigger play potential. But Kupp is well deserving of this price. He should probably be cracking 7K against this Tampa Bay defense.
Steve, I know you like Kupp's matchup against MJ Stewart.
Yeah, look at you doing your research.
You know I am.
I mean, it's a really appealing matchup. I mean, Stewart's been targeted against 16 times, he's allowed 10 catches, 115 yards, and a touchdown. And, Cooper Kupp, we always looked at him as like more of the red zone threat for the Rams, but he's looking more and more like the number one option. We've kind of seen Robert Woods take a step back in terms of production and targets. Like, he's been a great compliment to Kupp so far. The downfield threat of Brandon Cooks helps a lot too as well. But, if it weren't for the Rams playing in prime time, like, Kupp would have absolutely had a big jump in his salary. So you might as well just take the discount here, because he, after that huge performance he had in week 3, he easily could be over 7K, like Jeff said. So yeah, just another matchup to capitalize on Cooper Kupp here. Like, it would be crazy to fade him. I think if he's going to keep getting this type of production, this type of targets week in and week out, like, you just can't fade him, especially in this type of matchup where the Rams really could struggle to get the run going. So if they're going to have to keep throwing in this game, Kupp's going to be that guy.
Reed, is Kupp a no-brainer at $6,500?
I agree with these guys, but the contrarian, play in this would be to fade the number one receiver now with the Rams. Too bad Emerson didn't trade me him in the beginning of the season. But he is the number one de facto. We saw that Higbee was out and Gerald Everett was a popular tight end stream, but we know what Goff is doing. Goff is targeting. He's targeting Kupp, and it's his security blanket. And we saw Robert Woods and these guys last season do really well, but now we see Cooper Kupp, how comfortable Goff is with them, even when he's struggling. If you want to go contrarian, we talked about Tyler Lockett. I think he's in a great spot. Curtis Samuel. Curtis Samuel is cheaper. I think this is a Keenan Allen spot, so paying up at receiver. Going up against Miami, we just saw Amari Cooper torch Xavier Howard, the best defensive player that Miami has. Now this is a smash spot for Keenan Allen, who's on pace. On pace to do extremely well, having a career season. I think he's someone that I want to pay for in cash in all formats. But then going down to Curtis Samuel, going against Houston, who's giving up the third most, receptions in yards to receivers. I think that's a spot that you can save. But we talk about Cooper Kupp, he's just getting the volume.
Did you read a report that Cooper Kupp shares his mouth guard with a teammate?
Yeah, it's pretty disgusting.
It's really.
I think they just switched it for that game. Like Brandon Cook switched helmets and mouthpieces with Cooper. I don't know why. I just read the headlines, but it's pretty disgusting.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Like, would you want to wear my Invisalign?
Absolutely not, and I will not do it.
Fantastic. Guys, running tight on time. I'm glad I asked you that follow-up question, Reed. So quick on this one. Darren Waller, he's going to cost you $1,100 more to roster this weekend against the Colts. Third most expensive tight end. Why is that, Steven?
Look, the Raiders are actually really trying to make him their number one receiver, it feels like so far. The Colts were one of the worst teams against tight ends last season. That trend continues already this season, allowing an average of 16 DK fantasy points per week thus far. We just saw Austin Hooper go off against them. Waller's kind of becoming a Zach Ertz-esque type player for the Raiders, so you got to keep rolling him out there. 9.6 targets per week. He's getting an absolute monster share of the targets.
Yeah, Reed, 26 receptions across 3 games, man.
Yeah, Oakland is not just, it wasn't just Jared Cook last year. That's what Oakland wants to do, is they want to target their tight ends, and the Colts, like Steve was mentioning, bad against tight ends, and they have a lot of injuries. Darius Leonard is still questionable, and Malik Hooker is out. So yeah.
Jeff, did you see this guy becoming a top 3 price tight end?
Not this fast in the year. No, this happened quite fast. But I mean, like 13 catch games will do that for you. I do think you can stay on him here. I really do. The matchup, as these guys have already outlined, is fantastic. Derek Carr does not like to hang in the pocket and throw downfield, so he's probably just going to keep feeding Waller here. Yeah, I think this is going to continue to be like an every week story. And I mean, look, Waller is kind of like a more athletic Jared Cook, and Jared Cook is pretty athletic. So it's not shocking me that he's taking advantage of the situation.
Alrighty, guys, we'll look at some big changes and a handful of NFL future bets following week 3. But first, we got the golf gurus here right after Panel B dishes on Mike Evans.
The re-emergence of Evans was pretty helpful, and just the ownership really showed it. I mean, he's 6,600. When do you ever get Evans that cheap? And he was in a good matchup. I mean, it doesn't take brain surgery to figure out that the Giants secondary is almost non-existent. I mean, I pretty much rank him up there with the Eagles for some of the worst in the league. And Evans had a breakout at some point. And, one-on-one coverage, Janoris Jenkins against Mike Evans, just brutal. Yeah. But I even said this to you this morning. He had that unbelievable first half, and then he just ghosted in the second half. He only had that one catch in the second half. I think it was for 45 yards or whatever, and set up what would have been the winning field goal that did not happen. But now we're going to kind of get into this thing where it's, okay, do you play Mike Evans or Chris Godwin? Because Evans not going to have this type of production every single week, and Godwin, at least for the first 3 weeks, have been the more consistent one up until this point. But it just all relies upon Jameis Winston because...
Well, let me help you with that question.
Okay.
Week 4 in Los Angeles against the Rams.
Neither.
You don't play Chris Godwin or Mike Evans, so there, problem solved.
Easy one. Yeah, that's a good fade for week 4. But moving forward, I think that will be more of a issue as we go down the line.
Especially with, how much was Mike Evans? What did he get to last week?
He was 6,600 last
66.
week.
So now he's up $500 at 7,100 at the Rams. That's
What's
like
Godwin
a classic fade spot. Godwin 6K.
Okay, so yeah, that is an easy fade because Aqib Talib, Marcus Peters have been in shutdown mode, at least in the early part of the season.
OBJ didn't do much on Sunday Night Football against them.
Nope.
I want no part of
I don't think anybody did much of anything actually yesterday.
Say that again?
I don't think really anybody did anything yesterday in that game.
Cooper Kupp was good.
Yeah.
Oh, that's true. Very true.
I think Cooks was over.
Nick Chubb was good just based on volume.
Yeah.
And that was about it.
Yeah, and the Buccaneers also, ran the ball somewhat effectively, at least at what we'd expect out of them. Ronald Jones, 14 carries, 80 yards. 6
straight carries for Ronald Jones.
Barber had 13 for 48. I mean, I think with the quarterback, too, it is Jameis, and would always lean toward Evans, given that Jameis is a guy who's just going to chuck it up there. Evans is the one to go and get it, whereas Godwin's maybe a little bit more polished.
Hey, happy Tuesday. I'm Brendan Glasheen and with the DraftKings Fantasy Flash. Great to work. Adrian Wojnarowski back into the mix here at DraftKings. Woj confirms the Memphis Grizzlies and Andre Iguodala have mutually agreed to let him stay away from the team, hence the blank jersey. Woj also says the Grizz have no plans to negotiate a contract buyout and they'll expect to find a trade for the former Finals MVP before the February 6th trade deadline. Quoted by NBC Sports Bay Area Monday, Sunday. Iguodala says he and the Grizzlies are trying to figure out things on both sides, and he also said we're on the same page. Remember those rumors flying around right after Iggy was dealt to the Grizz? Lakers were the favorites, something of the like, to land the elite wing defender. Hey, LeBron James, I know it's a Tuesday, but you ought to pause the Taco Tuesday video recordings, man. Make a phone call to this 3-time champion who's taken down you head-to-head in the finals. I'm sure all Western Conference contenders, like the Lakers, are extremely interested, as well as all those teams in the East that are also vying for a championship.
We couldn't be more excited to have our gorgeous golf gurus, Jeff Ulrich and Reed Fowler,
Love
back
you guys.
on the show. Gentlemen, for the 6th consecutive year, Silverado Resort and Spa's North Course in Napa, California hosts the Safeway Open. Should we go? All right, we should.
I love me some cheese and some wine, that's for
Good
sure.
segment. Good segment. Okay, see you guys.
All right, we'll see you in Napa.
Well, before the action tees off, we want to play a little game we like to call for better or worse. So do you think these players' odds for the Safeway Open should be better or worse?
Pretty simple, guys. Justin Thomas is the favorite at plus 700. Jeff, do you agree with that number for him?
I literally just got the pun in that segment, like Betor.
Yes.
Oh, no, you didn't.
Wow,
You
you've
just
only
got
been playing
it?
this for
Just
months.
got it. Yeah, I know. It's good.
Welcome aboard.
I think Justin Thomas is fully deserved of being a single-digit favorite here. I mean, I think, 7-1 or plus 700 what he's at now. It's probably like a little bit too small for me, but realistically, you look at what Justin Thomas, the form he is coming in on. Obviously, he just put together that scorching playoffs where he came into the Tour Championship ranked #1. He's played at Silverado a couple of times too, and he played here back in 2015 when he wasn't even a full-time member of Tour, and finished T3 and then finished T8 the next year. So I think this course is going to set up great for a guy with a good power game like Justin Thomas. We've seen guys like Kevin Tway, Brandon Steele, big hitters off the tee, take advantage of these short par 5s. Justin Thomas winning in like a runaway here wouldn't shock me. So I think this is actually like a pretty normal number for Justin Thomas this week.
Reed, pretty normal number here?
Yeah, I mean, you look at some of these top guys like him, Francesco Molinari, a lot of guys probably just getting their requirement of playing in this tournament, every tournament on tour at least once every 4 years. So yeah, that's probably why a lot of these guys are playing. And it's a nice event, but he is the best player, talent-wise, in the field. Obviously, what he did last year coming into the Tour Championship, like Jeff was mentioning, at #1. But out of the top 4 guys, I really like Hideki Matsuyama. If you want to go off of this short number with Thomas, yeah, I think it's right. But it's look, if you look at Hideki at plus 1,600, look at what he did going into last season towards the end. I mean, his putter was really firing. If you look at the last 24 rounds or so, he had a couple of rounds where he was gaining 5 to 4 strokes putting. And if you just look over the last 3 tournaments, he was gaining strokes. And that's really what we like with Hideki. We get him back on pole, which is preferred surface. And this guy was 3rd in ball striking. So when you look at these guys at the top 4, if you want to attack someone, I think Hideki at plus 1,600 is not a bad one.
But Reed, what about Sung J M? Plus 2,600, just lost in a playoff on Sunday. Should he have better odds than this?
I mean, no, I don't think so. I think he's been playing really well. He was really close. This guy's going to win at some point. He's been playing so many tournaments. I forget how much number of tournaments that he's played in the last calendar year. It's one of the highest, and he's now on his 3rd tournament out of. I think he's playing in 6 of the like 6 of the next 8 beginning of the season. So this is his 3rd one. So you might have some fatigue, but birdie or better's gained this guy is top 5. Strokes gained par 5. He's 1st over the last 24 rounds. So at plus 1,600 or plus 2,600, I don't mind it, but I just think that there's other guys out there in that price range. You have Benny On, who's at plus 30 or plus 3,000. I like a little bit better. I'll get to him in a little bit, but yeah, this is fine.
And Jeff, Silverado, this is where it all started for the Rookie of the Year last year.
Yeah, I mean, T4 here last year, obviously. I mean, look, Sungjae M is a highly quality player, still extremely young. I just feel like this price is probably a little bit overdone, just considering how, going off recent form in the course history. It just feels like it's whenever you get like Sungjae Im, who still hasn't won a PGA Tour event at lower odds than Francesco Molinari and Bryson DeChambeau, you kind of got to take a step back and just like, is he just going to take that huge step forward this week, or is this just am I just following myself over a cliff here? Because it kind of feels like it might just be a week where I don't want to say takes off, but that putter comes back to earth because he has been putting fantastic over the last couple of events. But we've seen players with hot putting weeks regress, and again, at 2,600 in this field with Justin Thomas, Adam Scott, Patrick Cantlay above him in odds, there's a lot of elite players, surprisingly, for a fall tour event for him to overcome here. So I think this is a week where, even though it's in like the 20s, I still think Sanjay M's a little bit too short for me to bet.
Bryson DeChambeau missed the cut earlier this month at Greenbrier. Jeff, do you like him for plus 2,800 for this week?
Yeah, not really. I mean, look, Bryson just has not shown the type of tee to green game that we've seen have success at the Safeway Open at Silverado. I mean, each of the past 3 winners have led the field in strokes gained tee to green for the week. We haven't seen that kind of performance from Bryson for a while. He's either been, just wild around the greens or with his irons, mainly with his irons, or he just hasn't been getting it done just altogether. He's just taking a day off with his driver here and there. It just hasn't been consistent enough for me to bet him in this type of field, at this type of course. It's, you want to see it, especially at an event like this with other elite names. So, he's a little bit bigger in odds than Sanjay M, which is nice, but he's still not big enough for me to bet this week.
Reed, you out on him?
Yeah, same. I liked him a little bit at the Greenbrier. He was one of my slate-approved picks, and he just did not do well. And Jeff mentioned it, man. This guy is on something that he can't figure out right now. I think Benny Ann, even though this guy's putter eludes him every single week, it looks like, he's in putting extremely well. If you just look at his ball striking, he's one of the best in terms of his iron play, always is. He hits the ball a mile off the tee. If you look at his putting, when he's in contention, he has a average or above average putting week, and that's what we've seen in the last 2 tournaments. Now, it's kind of hard to predict because usually Benny Ann has 2 or 3 tournaments where he putts positively in the strokes gained putting category, and then he falls off a cliff. But I think this guy is in the right place. I think he was close last week, way closer in my opinion than Bryson.
All right, Sebastian Munoz hasn't finished worse than T7 this month, I believe, in 2 tournaments. He's won one of them, plus 7,500. Reed, do you think he's a longer shot that could actually win this event? And if not, I mean, who do you like who has long odds?
Yeah, Sebastian, it's always really hard to win back-to-back. If you look at these swing season tournaments, they do really match up with each other. So you like that he does well. He hasn't performed worse than a 7th place in the swing season so far, and obviously he has a win. But if you just look at the other guys in this field, especially below around his number, I mean, you have Phil Mickelson at plus 7,000. I think Phil Mickelson, who hasn't had a worse than a top 20 here in the last 3 years, is someone that I'd rather go at this number. But if you're going longer shots, I think Corey Connors is someone who's done well here before, who ball striking wise, he's top 5, fairways gained, he's top 25. And if we want to go really long, Luke List at plus 22,500. This guy has missed 7 of his last 8 cuts. He was a guy that we saw like in DK at $9,000. We've seen him in odds last season towards around this time perform extremely well, especially at this tournament where he had a top 4 last year, and the year before I think he had a top 35. And so get him at a top 5. He might not win this, but a top 5 at plus 1,800 is a longer shot that I'm potentially looking at.
Jeff, correct me if I'm wrong. You were a big Luke List guy, correct?
No, that would be Patrick Mayo, who is a big
okay.
I was actually hoping we could get through the week without mentioning Luke List, because Pat's not really doing that much golf, but I guess we can't because Reed brought him up. I think Munoz is, it's a nice story, but this is a bit of a different venue. He doesn't really have that much power off the tee. He'd really have to putt insanely well this week to get another win. So Reed mentioned a couple guys, and Luke List at like whatever he's at, plus 200. That's fine. It's a really long shot bet. I really like Harris English at these odds this week. He's really improved his off the tee game. Really good Poa annua putter. So that would probably be where I'd go in this range. He's anywhere from 60 to 71. I think Abraham Answer at around 50 to 1 is an interesting bet. Probably a guy I'd rather go to over Bryson DeChambeau too. So I guess that's my conglomeration of guys that are longer in odds there. But we'll see. Maybe Luke List will win one day, and then everyone can stop talking.
Golf gurus, you've done it again. Next up, we'll take a look at some big changes in NFL player futures.
After this dose of tour junkies.
Switching gears a little bit, you talk about like a fade. On the show, you talked about Patrick Cantlay. I don't know if he was like your official fade. I think Mark Leishman was your official fade.
Yeah.
But Cantlay, I don't know if you should just totally cross him out this week. You mentioned fading him. You were kind of leaning towards fading him. And I just don't know. 11-2, whatever, that's probably a right price for him. We've seen him play incredibly well this year. He checks all the boxes except for maybe driving accuracy and slow play. But other than that, I mean, I think Cantlay this is a solid course for him. And so I really question why you would actually even think of fading him. I don't think the ownership's going to be that high either for him.
Well, I don't know about that. Cantlay's always pretty chalky no matter what. But, I mean, again, it comes down to just your choice in this range, right? In the 10K range, I'd rather eat the chalk with Sung JM or play Justin Thomas. So for me, that's you can't play them all up here. And I think that just it's really just a preference. I mean, everybody knows how much I love Patrick Cantlay. I'm a huge fan of everything Patrick Cantlay does. But this week, for $400 more, I like Justin Thomas in this range. In every single stat category that I looked at, off the tee, approach, greens and regulation, Justin Thomas outpaces Patrick Cantlay in the last 24 rounds. Now, Patrick Cantlay's a great ball striker for sure, but it's just a matter of choice. You can't play them all. So I'm going M and JT in this top tier.
A lot went down in the NFL in Week 3. We have much to consider. Here to help us do some considering are DraftKings contributors Reed Fowler and Steve Buchanan. Plus, that's Pierce.
That is Pierce.
So,
what the hell's going on?
RotoWire's Jerry Donavedian is here. Pierce is not here for this segment, although he was just terrified to be brought up on camera.
It is very nice, though, to see your face instead, Steve.
That was honestly pure and sheer terror on Pierce's face.
Okay, great. This is NFL Sing the Futures, where we get your takes on some big changes in player futures. Daniel Jones has started just one game, and just like that, he's the favorite to win Offensive Rookie of the Year at plus 200. Meanwhile, Kyler Murray has slipped to plus 350. Reed, you think Jones should already be the favorite here after just one performance?
No, I mean, that intro is kind of like Thighgate that I missed last week. So, that was great.
Yeah, you should have captained that milky white.
Okay.
No, look, you guys mentioned it. You mentioned Emerson. After one start, Daniel Jones is now, anointed the Rookie of the Year or close to with the odds. I mean, what happens when Dwayne Haskins inevitably comes into the game?
Making the favorite.
No, automatically the favorite. Look, he's performed extremely well, and I think he proved a lot of doubters wrong with just one game, and now he goes home against Washington, and he should have another good game. But for the value, quarterbacks are always going to have a leg up on the other skill positions just because the amount of production that they have. But if in terms of value, I mean, you have Scary Terry there, plus 1,600. Josh Jacobs, a little shaky, right, in terms of his injury and his production. Looking at those guys, I mean, Scary Terry, McLaurin, he's on pace for 16 touchdowns. It's not going to happen. But if he gets 10-plus touchdowns and this Washington team with Haskins maybe becomes someone that's a little that can compete. I mean, we've already seen the Giants go from a bottom barrel team now to being competitive. I think you got to pump the brakes a little bit on Jones being the favorite for the Rookie Offensive Player of the Year.
Steve, you pumping the brakes here on former backup boy turned Rookie of the Year favorite?
I'm just glad I'm on the screen. It's me, Steve Buchanan, not Pierce. Dummy. So here's the thing with Daniel Jones. He's got a great matchup coming up against the Redskins, but then it's going to get a little dicey after that. He's going to see the Vikings and the Patriots in the next two. Talk about Kyler Murray's, odds going down a bit too. He's got a pretty favorable schedule coming up. He's going to see the Seahawks, the Bengals, and the Falcons after that. So, let's kind of assess this once the season goes on. He looked awesome. There's no doubt about that. But we also saw Mason Rudolph come to the game for the Steelers. When he started the first game, didn't look as good as, not as sharp as he did when he came in for relief. So did he make a huge difference in that Giants offense? Absolutely. But I think we need to see a little bit more here before we start getting a little more excited. I mean, quite frankly, 2-to-1 odds for your, on your money. It's, it's not a great return on your investment here. If you're going to make bets like this, for me at least, I'd rather take some of the long shots here and, see what you get out of it. But as of right now, at least the field looks quite open. There's no solidified candidate as of right now. If Daniel Jones is the one who's leading it, then to me the field's pretty much wide open. So not a fan of this yet. Let's see how he looks as I'm going forward. And so at least for right now, it's a definite fade for me.
Jerry, it's kind of crazy. Jones entered week 2 with plus 3,000 odds at the DK Sportsbook. Then after Sunday's comeback win, he's at plus 200 now. So how much more do you have to see out of him?
I think these guys hit it right on the money. He looked good in the preseason, came out, played great in his first game. but the odds are not great, and it's such a deep rookie class. And you look way down. We know quarterbacks have an advantage, right? Like a good quarterback season is probably going to beat a great season from a running back. Maybe not as much from a wide receiver, just because we haven't seen that in a few years from a rookie receiver. But Gardner Minshew, way better odds. We still haven't seen Dwayne Haskins. Kyler Murray's off to a rough start. That was, I think, to some degree should have been expected. You've got guys like David Montgomery. Marquise Brown is averaging 9 targets and 90 yards a game. There's so many guys, even someone like DK Metcalf. Like I can keep going forever, so I'll stop. But you get the point. There's a lot of guys who could do it this year.
Okay, Dalvin Cook is leading the league in rushing yards right now with 375, hence DK Sportsbook making him the favorite to lead the league in rushing yards this season at plus 200. Steve, he's dealt with injuries a lot in his 3-year career. Do you think he'll maintain this level of production all season and finish number 1?
I mean, look, as of right now, he's on pace for over 2,000 rushing yards. But, like you mentioned, the injuries are always a factor. This is somebody who's played a total of 15 games over the last 2 years. And for the odds that you're getting him right now, do you really want to put money down on, essentially 2-to-1 odds at this point here? But what is in his favor, and if he can stay healthy, is his schedule is very, very favorable. Like, he really only has a couple of matchups where, you would think that he might have some trouble. He's going to see the Bears 2 more times this season. He's going to see the Cowboys. The Chargers are kind of borderline about how they are against the run right now. It's kind of iffy. But other than that, he's got a really strong schedule against teams who are not great against the run. So if he can stay healthy, then yes, like he definitely has a very, very good chance to do so. But that's the biggest thing is can you trust his health? Because at least in the 3 years that he's been in the league, he's shown that he's not someone that can be trusted. So I'm not crazy about it. He definitely has the potential, but the risk factor about his health is just a little too much for me with the odds that you're getting on him right now.
Jerry, does his past health injuries make you a little nervous here?
I don't know if his past injuries necessarily make me nervous. I mean, tore an ACL, and usually guys do after a big injury like that have an elevated risk of injury the next year. But even so, I mean, he plays at the most, this position that's most sensitive to injuries in general. And you are really, in terms of the odds, you are really paying for his hot start here. And he is giving some carries away to Madison in Minnesota. I just think after 3 weeks, the odds you're getting here, it's just you're paying too much for what's already happened. There's, Ezekiel Elliott has led the league in rushing yards every year. He's been healthy. Christian McCaffrey is right up there, pretty close to Dalvin Cook, I think about 60 yards behind. So yeah, it's just, I think same with the rookie of the year. There's enough guys to do it that I would rather go with someone who has lower odds and is starting from a lower point, maybe spotting Cook 100 yards rather than paying up for that, 50 or 100 yard advantage he has right now.
Reed, do you think Dalvin Cook is going to stay healthy and finish number 1?
I hope he stays healthy because it's fantastic to watch. And Adam Thielen and Stephon Diggs owners in season long are, you don't ever hope for an injury, but that would help them out quite a bit. But these guys both hit on all the pertinent points here. And if you want to look for some a long shot, I think, and I do not like talking about the Jaguars every show, but Leonard Fournette, if you look at just the amount of volume and the amount of time this guy is on the field, look, he didn't show anything. He didn't show anything on Thursday. He hasn't shown anything in the first 3 weeks. But if you just look at that division and you look how much volume that this guy is potentially getting, at plus 3,300, it's still early in the season, and Jerry hit on it. There's a lot of guys that you can really pencil in to have the most rush yards. We see what Fournette can do. He can break off a 70-yard run. If this offense with Gardner Minshew can move the ball through the air, I think Fournette is someone that I potentially take a look at plus 3,300 because these other guys is just way too short for me.
Look at Reed backing America's team. I love it. All right, Odell Beckham Jr., he has the second best odds to lead the league in receiving yards this season at plus 800, despite the fact that he's more than 100 yards behind Keenan Allen here. So, Jerry, you think Odell still has a good shot at finishing as the league's number 1 receiver?
I think he has a good enough shot. I'd put him at 3rd or 4th most likely, but this is where you're getting the odds to bet on the favorite. I mean, plus 500, and Keenan Allen doesn't just lead the league in receiving yards. He leads in targets. He leads in air yards. He leads in target share. He's way ahead of everyone else besides Michael Thomas. Allen's up at 36.5%. Thomas is the only other guy above 31, and he just lost his quarterback for the next 8 weeks probably. So yeah, I think Beckham's an okay bet, but you can get Julio Jones, who has 5 straight 1,400-yard seasons at the same odds, or at not that much worse odds, you can get a guy who's averaging 14 targets and like 130 yards a game. So I think right in that upper range, you do have two things that kind of stand out as better value.
Reed, would you chase these odds for OBJ?
No, I don't think it's bad because, again, the volume is there, and I think Cleveland has to regress a little bit. I think their play calling doesn't allow or shouldn't allow them to rush the ball on 4th and 9, and you have OBJ out there out wide. But there's some other guys like we always talked about, or like we always talk about. Mike Evans. We see what happens when you target Mike Evans against Janoris Jenkins. And he was once a good DB, now not so much. Target Mike Evans at plus 1,400. This guy has been close to or has led the league in yards. But going back to Keenan Allen, he's on pace for over 2,000 yards. Targets on pace for over 200 targets. Yes, this should come back a little bit down to earth, but I think it's Allen and some other guys like Mike Evans.
You like his chances, Steve?
I mean, not with how Baker Mayfield's throwing the ball right now. He's completed about 52% of his pass attempts over the last 2 weeks. And, Odell's averaging 15.2 yards per reception, but those numbers are kind of skewed right now because he had that 89-yard bomb in week 2. You take that away, he drops all the way down to 11 yards per reception. That's not the type of numbers for a guy that's going to be leading the league in receiving yards. DeAndre Hopkins at 1,400 is just too low right now. I feel like that is something that I'd be more interested in taking because, obviously Watson loves going to him. They have their issues with their offensive line. Watson's getting a lot of pressure right now, but Odell Beckham at 800 is, a little bit better than some of the other ones we've talked about, but I just don't see it right now. Like, Baker Mayfield does not look good. He's throwing a ton of interceptions. He's been sacked 11 times already. They have a lot of issues that need to work out before we start looking into one of their receivers to lead the league in receiving yards. So I think DeAndre Hopkins make a lot of sense. Reed mentioned Mike Evans. I don't mind that either, but, he's already ghosted the first 2 weeks. Last week was nice, but he's got a really tough matchup coming up in week 4. So that's definitely going to scale back a little bit too as well. So I think DeAndre Hopkins is the more attractive option here out of the bunch.
Good stuff, guys. We'll turn our attention to baseball after these messages from the Pat Mayo Experience.
Need to go down and roster Tony Romo, who is actually min-priced in this field. I don't want to have to do that, so I'll probably avoid the super high end of the 10Ks. But I really love Hideki. He's where I'd start.
So what happens to Tony Romo here if he ends up making the cut? Does that mean he's not calling a game on Sunday?
Oh, wow. That is a great question. Maybe he's just assuming he's going to miss the cut, right? I mean, at least he won't be like in the final group on Sunday. I wonder where his assignment is. Could he? I guess he couldn't even get out of there early enough. Yeah, I don't know what he would do. I'd love to see it.
Yeah, well, now we're in a situation where Tony Romo is entering events knowing he's not going to make the cut. Or if he does, he'll probably end up withdrawing after 3 rounds so he can go do his real job that he gets paid tens of millions of dollars to go to. You talk about this 9K range, though. We have Bryson at 9.9, Francesco Molinari at $9,700 coming over after playing Wentworth last week, which is really surprising to me. Brant Snedeker, Bjorn Hanan coming off a 3rd place finish. Morikawa, the first time we've seen him all year. Leishman is in the field currently despite a withdrawal from the previous tournament, the Greenbrier. Was it a withdrawal? Yeah, he ended up. Did he withdraw or miss the cut? I can't remember.
Yeah, he withdrew with a back thing.
All right, then you got Shez, Ryan Moore, Kevin Na. That is the entire $9,000 range. Now, when you spoke a little bit earlier about gaining strokes off the tee is super key here, but so is having accuracy. Ryan Moore actually lines up really well for this field. He was 2nd here last year too.
Yeah, I'm pretty polarized in this range. There's either guys I really like or really don't like. More probably for me falls on the don't like side of it because I feel like you're just paying for the 2nd place finish last year where he lost in a playoff, right? Like there's not much inspiring happening since that 2nd place finish. He's only finished top 10 in 1 time since then. He's only got 2 top 15s in that time frame. It just hasn't been a lot of good golf for Ryan Moore. Yes, he's going to hit a lot of fairways, which I think is going to be absolutely critical this week. I just think you're paying for his finish last year, unfortunately.
Yeah, I think that you might be right with that, but just looking how he's trended coming into this event, obviously that was his first start of the year a season ago, but the way that he ended this year, the results weren't necessarily there, but he's gained at least 3.5 strokes on approach in his past 3 tournaments. The putter has been absolutely cold for about 10 months at this point, but POA is his preferred putting surface. I actually like Ryan Moore a lot, and I think that people will see him as overvalued and not go to him. I don't know if he's going to come in with a ton of ownership here.
I do think on that side of it, if you want to pay the 9,100, especially because even Kevin Na's right there, and there's some other appealing options that are going to garner a lot more ownership. If you are willing to bank on, hey, this is a good situation for Moore. We've seen him play here in the past. I think you're going to get him at a really good ownership number.
So I'm guessing then you would rather go with like Chez Reavie over Ryan Moore.
Yeah, I mean, I do like Reavie. He doesn't have great course history here. He's just kind of racks up a bunch of top 15s and top 20s, but he feels like a really good course fit. He's leads the tour and obviously the field in driving accuracy. He's always pretty good with those irons. And, I've seen him win a golf tournament in the last handful of months, which is something you can't always say for a lot of these guys, which I think is noteworthy. So between Reavie at 92 and Kevin Na at 9,000, who I was waiting to see how he came back from that injury that ended his season a little bit early last year, and he played well enough at the Greenbrier, and he also has elite course history. I'll probably just kind of go on both sides of Ryan Moore here.
Okay, it's our only baseball segment on this show tonight.
That's
we
true.
have questions. These 3 have answers. DraftKings contributors Pierce Dietrich, which you saw him earlier. That is not Steve Buchanan. Okay, Gary and Thorne, plus the Action Network's Matt LaMarca as well.
It's MLB over-under, which is pretty self-explanatory. Now, Garrett Cole has been wrecking offenses all season and is averaging 35 DK points over his last 10 starts. You think he'll go over or under that mark tonight, Garion?
I mean, it sounds crazy, but it's kind of hard to see him not getting over this number again. I mean, it's something he's done 9 times already this season. And even if you don't want to buy too much into the recency bias of his strikeout totals, which are mind-numbing, 48% strikeout rate in his last 7 starts, for the entirety of the season, he has dominated left-handed bats in terms of strikeout percentage, up at 42.5%, 51.1% in that same 7-stretch span. And Seattle's got a lineup chock full of left-handed bats tonight with high strikeout rates. They've got 7 in there. Dan Vogelbach's back, which means his strikeout rate is also back in that lineup. I mentioned last week that you might have to start monitoring how A.J. Hinch is going about controlling his starters' pitch counts, but that really hasn't been the case with Cole either. He's thrown 101 pitches in his last 2 starts, so I think he gets there tonight.
Matt, do you think he gets there tonight?
Yeah, I mean, it's an aggressive prediction, 35 DraftKings points, but I'm going to take the over as well. If you look at, pitchers with comparable salaries and Vegas data, they've averaged over 27 DraftKings points per game. Now you factor in that Garrett Cole has become the best strikeout pitcher in baseball. And as Garion mentioned, he's been even better recently. It seems like double-digit strikeouts should be a minimum for him. When you consider that the opposing offense is implied for less than 3 runs by Vegas, I think that overall this is just a really good spot that you need to go to.
Pierce, these guys say it's aggressive, but they're on board. What about you?
Yeah, I'm going to go under. I'll be a little contrarian. It's very tight. The matchup against the Mariners is about as easy as it can get. In his matchups before, he's about 60% K rate, 50% K rate, a 40% K rate. So it's a really good matchup. But you look at since All-Star break, half the games he's gone over that number, half the games he hasn't gone to that number. So it's about a toss-up. And I'm going to lean towards under because it's the last game before the playoffs. If he doesn't strike everybody out, and if they cut his innings a little bit, then he doesn't hit that number. Now, I get it. If he gets 24 batters and he strikes out half of them, he's probably going to get there. It will be close, but I'll go under.
All right, Maddie, please pay attention. Aaron Nola's been having a rough time on the mound lately, and allow me to dive a little deeper here. 3 of his last 4 starts, he's produced less than 14 DK points. Facing the Nationals this evening, okay? So is he going over or under that mark?
Well, Do I have a reputation for like not paying attention on this show?
I
feel like you just spelt that out for me like I was a child.
That's just how Emerson
I want you to know
talks.
that sometimes you act like a child.
Yeah, that's fair. I can vibe with that.
Thank you.
Listen, 14 is such a low bar to clear. Like any competent starting pitcher should be able to get over 14 in a start. So I will go over, but that doesn't mean he's going to be a good fantasy play at his current salary. He has a tough matchup versus the aforementioned Nationals. Thank you, Emerson. And his StatCast data from his past 3 starts is really concerning to me. He's given up an average hard hit rate of 58%, average exit velocity of 97 miles an hour. So I don't think by any means that Nola is a good play here, but 14 DraftKings points shouldn't be a problem for him.
Alrighty, Pierce, where do you sit on this? This is game 2 of a doubleheader, by the way.
I'm going to go under, and let's just continue on that point about the StatCast metrics. 53% hard hit contact over the last 7 games. If you look close, his velocity is pretty much where it's been all year. His spin rate's where it is. He's getting first pitch strikes. He's getting swinging strikes, but he's worn out and he's making mistakes. And he could go out there today and clean up those mistakes and pitch a gem, or he can continue to do what he's doing, which is making mistakes, leaving the ball over the plate, and giving up home runs. I'm going to pretty much lean towards him being worn out, and he probably just needs to call it a year.
Okay, Gary, what do you think? I mean, Phillies are no longer playing for postseason success because they were eliminated moments ago.
By the Nats.
Yeah. Look, I'm going to side more towards Matt's end of the spectrum here. I'll agree that 14 is just a ridiculously low threshold for a guy like Nola to clear. Do I think he's going to be a good play? Do I think he's viable on this slate? No. I think he's looking more at like 17 or 18 points, especially considering the win expectancy in this game up against Scherzer is not overly high. So he can't even really count on those 4 bonus points for getting a win. But yeah, this is really a terrible spot in terms of DFS. The Nationals have the lowest strikeout rate in the National League in the month of September. The StatCast data these guys mentioned from his last 4 starts is not good. But, if you just want to cherry pick samples, he's also gone over 20 DraftKings points in 5 of his last 8 starts. So I just think for a guy like Nola, 14 is something he should be able to do in his sleep, even if it's not his best stuff on any given night.
Oscar Mercado's been on fire. 14 DK points over his last 10 games. Will he go over or under when he faces the White Sox, Pierce?
I'll go with the over. He's going to face pretty bad bullpen. He's in the hitter's ballpark. And speaking of him being on fire, 400 WOBA, 250 ISO over the last month. The Indians seem like probably one of the best stacks of the night if you can afford them.
Where are you going on this one, Garion?
Yeah, let's go over here too. Mercado for the season, his expected WOBA against left-handed pitching and right-handed pitching is actually pretty similar. But in the month of September, as Pierce was talking about, his numbers against lefties have skyrocketed. He's got a 391 ISO in the month. And then on top of all that, we're talking about Hector Santiago here. I don't know how many innings Santiago's actually going to pitch, but Mercado's up in the 2 spot. You cross your fingers and hopes he gets 2 opportunities against a guy like Hector Santiago, and I think he might even get to this number by the 3rd inning.
Matt, you want to go with the over with these guys?
I'll take the over as well. I don't feel like it's a slam dunk, but a lot of positives working for Mercado. I mean, Indians implied for 6.2 runs. He's batting second in the lineup. His StatCast data from the past 15 days is good. He's outperformed his averages basically across the board over that time frame. So I think that he's in a nice little spot here. I don't feel like it's a slam dunk by any stretch, but I will take a slight over on 14.
All right, Kevin Biggio has averaged 15 DK points against the Orioles this season. So where's he going tonight? Let's start with you up north, Garion.
Yeah, this one's a little bit tougher than some of the other ones, I think. I'm going to take the over, but it's a slight over, and it's mostly matchup dependent. I think a lot of this, you have to lean into the Orioles' awfulness, essentially. Bundy's been better the last 2 months, but his expected WOBA to left-handed batters is about 52 points higher than his expected WOBA to right-handed batters since the beginning of August. And Biggio's been fantastic his last 19 games. He's got a 203 WRC+. He's got a 372 expected WOBA. I do worry he's just too passive. He's gotten a little bit more aggressive early in the count, and it sort of correlates to this recent run of success, but there's a chance he just walks twice. And doesn't reach this number because he's not putting enough balls in play. So that is something to think about, but I'll take the slight over.
All right, Maddie?
I'm going under. I'm buying that Dylan Bundy has improved a bit here over the second half of the season. Just a 4.1 FIP. Strikeout rate, it's a little bit down, but he still is capable of making batters miss. I think that this overall is a spot where I'm kind of avoiding the Blue Jays. Biggio is expensive. I think that you can do better. I'll take the under on his output tonight.
Pierce, will the rookie deliver at home against the O's?
I'm with Matt. I'm going to go with the under. Biggio, I mean, look, he was 4 Ks and 6 at-bats against Bundy. I know that's a small sample size, but there's something here. You look at Bundy, he's got a strikeout pitch and a slider. It works well against lefties, a 220 xWOB, a 50% K rate with that slider. And you look at Biggio versus the slider, he's got a 220 xWOB and a 50% K rate. I don't think he can handle the slider from Bundy. I don't expect a good game from him.
Hit us with those slate-approved picks for this 13-game slate. Pierce, you're up first.
Matt Chapman against Dylan Peters. Terrible against right-handed bats, 2.2 home runs per 9. And then Chapman, 300 ISO against the lefties.
Gary, where are you going?
I got to keep going with Garrett Cole. It's James Harden, guys. You just keep riding it till it doesn't work anymore. And this is the last start, so might as well keep riding it to the end.
Matt, slate approved.
Ronald Acuna. He's expensive, but he's ripping the baseball right now, and he's motivated on the base paths to get that 40th steal, join that 40-40 club. I love that combo.
Yeah, you do. Good stuff seeing you. Good seeing all of you, I should say. We'll wrap up the show with NFL waiver wire recommendations after this.
Brendan Glasheen here, and with your DraftKings Fantasy Flash. Jay Gruden was pretty straightforward after Monday night's loss to the Bears. Case Keenum will remain the starter in the nation's capital. Asked if he'd consider switching to first-round pick Dwayne Haskins, Gruden said, not really. No, I think the most important thing is we have to have some continuity. I can't be changing people every 5 minutes here. I've got to give Case an ample opportunity to play with these new guys. We all remember the complete 180 Pat Shurmur pulled last week when the Giants ultimately decided to hand the keys of the franchise to Daniel Jones. That worked out okay. Rallying from 18 points down probably wasn't in the game script, but you get the point. There was a sense of hope for the G-men. The Redskins could copy one of their division rivals, funny enough, facing them this week at MetLife by rushing Haskins into action, lighting a fire under the skins to possibly save their season. All sounds great and heroic, but it's not apples to apples. Haskins had far less college experience than Jones, 14 starts to Jones's 36 at Duke, and that Washington O-line is wretched. Sometimes emotion is the way to lean, however, after Keenum fumbled that ball in the fourth quarter, reaching for a first down like it was a goal line stand, a QB sneak. How could you not be saying WTF if you're a Redskins player? And selfishly, as football consumers like me and you, Daniel Jones versus Dwayne Haskins would be a real treat.
Okay, we are back for more. It is the Sweats, Emerson, Lotzia, Jessie, Coffield, and who else?
DraftKings contributors Jeff Ulrich, Reed Fowler, Steve Buchanan, and RotoWire's Jerry Donabedian.
Great. Let's help out our season-long lovers watching us. They need help on the waiver wire, whether it's because of injury, bye week, or they just really screwed up their draft. Starting at quarterback, Reed, who's your guy?
Daniel Jones. You have to. I think when you look at the state of the quarterback, which we thought was a deep position before, now everyone's getting injured. Now they're getting injured or they're not doing well. I think James Winston is someone that you can pick up as well if someone dropped him, but Daniel Jones coming back at home against Washington, we just saw what Washington was able to do. So, that's it. Can you hear me now?
Reed, I couldn't hear you. Do you want to give us your take in like 10 seconds?
Just Daniel Jones. Danny Dimes. Daniel Jones is going to be against Washington at home.
Okay, great. Let's go to Steve.
Thank you for that take, Reed. That was wonderful. I really like Matthew Stafford here. He's coming off a really disappointing outing against the Eagles, who by far have one of the worst secondaries in the league. But now he's going to face the Chiefs. It's going to be a fast-paced game. It's going to be one they're going to have to keep up with. The Chiefs defensively have been averaged 271 passing yards to opposing quarterbacks, 4 touchdowns allowed, and that's come with a pretty okay group of quarterbacks. Lamar Jackson, Derek Carr, and sorry to say, Gardner Minshew walk. So, it's not like this has been quarterbacks that have gone in there and absolutely annihilated them, but it's a good matchup. And, with the Lions projected as 6.5 point underdogs, I think this is a really good spot for Stafford.
Jerry, you agree with him, right?
Yeah, I do. I love Stafford as a 1 week pickup. After this week, he does get 3 division games in his next 5, and those NFC North defenses, including the Lions, are all very good. So it's definitely a 1 week pickup. Yeah, I love the matchup with Stafford. You look at the weapons he's got. He's playing pretty well this year. Really, for fantasy purposes, the issue has been the volume. They've got a very run-first philosophy under their coordinator, Darrell Bevel, and I think they'll bring that into this game, and I think they'll have some success with it. But are they going to keep pace with Patrick Mahomes? Probably not. And the game's going to be played indoors in a dome. I think Stafford's going to end up having to throw it 35-plus times, and against that Chiefs defense, it's probably going to work out to around 300 yards and a couple touchdowns. So, yeah, Daniel Jones, if you're looking for the long-term upside, is definitely the play, but just for my 1 week starter, I'll go with Stafford.
And Jeff, sounds like you're going with a guy who turned the ball over 5 times last night.
Yeah. Turnovers were the case that they gave him.
Good grief.
Look,
what are you doing?
I echo what Jerry just said. If you need a long-term option at QB, definitely go all in on Daniel Jones because with the rushing upside, Evan Ingram there.
That was Reed.
That was me.
Daniel Jones. Come on.
Oh, he's all over the place.
We couldn't even hear you. Like, get a microphone, buddy. No, but look, I mean, long-term Daniel Jones. If you need a 1 week guy, though, I mean, Stafford's fine, but like, why not Case Keenum? The Giants have allowed 346 passing yards per game thus far. Both these defenses are terrible. You got Terry McLaurin catching touchdowns every week. Easily could see 300 yards and 2 touchdowns here from Case Keenum against a brutal Giants defense. So 1 week thing, but Case Keenum definitely playing next week.
All right, Reed, what about at running back? Going to move it along for these answers right here.
Darrell Williams, like both of the starters with LaShawn McCoy and Damian Williams are out. I think Darrell Williams, you saw him, any Kansas City back in that backfield is going to be successful. And it's not going to be Wayne Gallman just because he's not that good of a running back.
Steve, running back.
Yeah, it's going to be Carlos Hyde for me. The Panthers are allowing an average of 97 rushing yards per game. Texans are favored by 4.5 in this one. And Duke Johnson's just not getting any carries. 9, 6, and 2 over the last 3 weeks. So it almost looks like he's phasing out of this offense, if anything. So Carlos Hyde for the lion's share of carries.
Jerry, who are you going with?
I'm taking the chalk here. Give me the safe volume. I know Wayne Gallman is far removed from Saquon Barkley, but when you're talking about like an FAAB bid or using waiver priority, which I'm going to be using that top priority that I've kind of been like fiendishly saving for maybe too long now, but thinking it's going to pay off here. Look, he's not going to get the 16, 17 carries and 7 to 8 targets a game Barkley got, but you don't need him to. It's a waiver guy, an FAB guy. Like if he's at 12, 13 carries, 3 targets per game, that's great. Just look at the playing time after Barkley went out. Gallman had 40-plus snaps. Elijah Penny, special teams player, had 3. So, yeah, they're going to bring in a third running back this week. But I think that, Gallman has a chance to be up around 80% of snaps. And even if he's only at 60%, I think he'll be like a decent functional RB2 here.
Jeff, who are you looking at running back?
Volume-wise, Gallman is definitely like the only running back really in play this week. But I'm just going to keep martingale Jalen Samuels on this show. At some point, Pittsburgh will realize that James Conner and his 2 yards per carry is no good, and Jalen Samuels is a talent. So if people drop him, snag him, because eventually this will turn and Samuels will get all the work.
A little less than 3 minutes to go. Talk to me about who you'd scoop up at wide receiver, Reed.
It's going to be Deontay Thompson, the rookie in Pittsburgh. Look, third most snaps at wide receiver, 23% target share. Not really exciting, but most of the receivers that you could grab are already snagged up. So give me the rookie in Pittsburgh.
Steven.
Yeah, it's should have been the Super Bowl MVP who got 0 receptions. Only 3 targets when AB was on the field, 7 targets last week without him there. Matchup isn't great this week, but for a long-term prospect, he's definitely somebody you want to look at.
All right, Jerry?
I actually love all the picks these guys have, especially Philip Dorsett. Really high expectations for him. But just looking at a guy who is available, for 1 week and who's available in really pretty much any league at this point. Randall Cobb playing the Saints team. Just can't defend the pass at all. We saw Lockett crush them from the slot and outside last week. Cobb obviously is going to be more in the slot against PJ Williams, who going back to last year has really struggled. Michael Gallup out. There's a lot of opportunity for someone besides Cooper to step up. I know last week it was very spread out to a bunch of players, but the Saints do tend to funnel volume towards other teams' wide receivers for a few years now, really, with their style of defense. So I think Cobb is going to be up past that 5 targets per game mark that we've seen and closer to around 7. So especially in PPR leagues, we know he's going to be a guy who brings in a high percentage of his targets. I think he's going to be Someone who maybe is some of these other guys have more upside, but if you're just looking for someone you need to start in a pinch week 4, Cobb is my guy.
All right, Jeff, what do you say, buddy?
Preston Williams, Miami Dolphins, 12 targets last week. Should have had a touchdown, but his coach doesn't know how the replay system works. But definitely showing up there. And Josh Rosen.
All right, 45 seconds, so just say it. Lots of DST fans out there. Who do you like, Reed?
Steelers.
Steve.
Ravens got dropped. Pick them back up.
Jerry.
Whoa.
Colts.
Jeff.
7-point favorite.
Jacksonville Jaguars. If some bozo dropped these guys, the best team in the league, then go back and get them. You can ride them the rest of the way to their.
It's like Gardner Minshew's playing on the defense as well.
I know Jeff and I are big Jaguars guys, but their defense does look like they did 2 years ago.
Ugh.
Yeah. And you know
Super
what?
Bowl, baby.
Jalen,
Let's go.
Jalen, they're not going to trade him. They're going to pay him, and life is going to be
all
great.
a ruse.
And we're going to win the Super Bowl next year.
And then if they don't, Emerson's going to be done with this team for the second year in a row before he's not done with this team. But we'll see you tomorrow at 6 p.m.
I'm on the train right now.